Hello, everybody. It's Dr. V and Dr. J back with the other UFO show, where comedy, seriousness, drama, and lack of special effects come together to give you great information about UFOs. Information you can use.
Tell your friends.
Yes, please. We never wanted to insult people about how you're supposed to subscribe, like, notifications, share, things like that.
You all know that stuff already.
You all know that stuff already. So we don't ever ask for that, do we?
Nope.
We don't even do like subliminal hints about it at all.
No, we do not.
Like, please
not insult the intelligence.
We do not do that. We don't hold our hands like this and go, please, 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 or anything like that. We would not do that to you.
No.
Our audience is much more critical thinkers than that. Now, we have a source of information that we don't mind sharing with you guys that we think is a well-rounded show. Some of their bits and pieces are extra long, like over an hour and stuff, unlike ours where we try to keep them at least around 30 or 40. They have the funds and the resources to dig really deep into a lot of documents and sightings and stuff and do deep analysis, and that is the show called The Black Vault. And we have used that as a source for information sometimes ourselves.
I was recently discussing with the wise one here, a wonderful science fiction writer by the name of Theodore Sturgeon. And I call it Sturgeon's theorem, in which he famously said 90% of everything is crap. My first example would be, television. And then I would say, look at ufology and say, 90% of UFO sightings can be explained. And 90% of anything you see on the internet, YouTube or whatever, is crap. Which is why this show, this program, I like. This guy reminds me of Stanton Friedman. Very meticulous researcher, just almost like Jack Webb on Dragnet, just the facts.
Go through the facts and analyze. So there's about a 15-minute clip he pulled out of a longer interview with former CIA director, James Woolsey. And I don't think he would be considered somebody who's lost his mind in his old age or anything like that.
Nope.
So I had a lot of respect for the man and what he's done for this country. And so we're going to play this video. It's going to be right up here, pretty much center. Hopefully our editing crew, which consists of 10 persons, I think, or just 10 digits. 10. I think it might be just 10 digits. We'll be able to line up everything with our comments and our facial expressions and stuff. We'll try to zoom our face up toward the camera since our cameraman is missing today too. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We just don't have a crew. To be honest with you, we don't have a crew. It's just us two guys sitting at a table in an undisclosed location.
A secure, undisclosed. Location.
I locked the front door. I did.
Locked the front door.
Yeah. Hopefully the people with the keys won't come by. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so here we go with that video.
Hey everyone, John Greenwald here, creator and founder of theblackvault.com. I decided to make this video to excerpt the UFO related cuts from my interview with James Woolsey. Now, I do want to urge you and encourage you to look at the whole interview. It puts into context secrecy as a whole. Obviously, the main brunt of the interview was about the JFK assassination, and I had cleared with him and his PR people to ask about UFOs.
Now, there's a little bit of a ramble here at the beginning with him doing the introduction because this was something that came out of a longer video. We don't recommend that you have to go watch the whole video. James Woolsey is coming out with a book, but it had nothing to do with UFOs. As Greenwald said, it was part of a bigger interview. You can go to blackvault.com and watch that larger interview if you want. If you're interested in JFK and secrecy and things like that in the government, you could go take a look at that. The government would never keep anything secret.
No. I like the idea of PR people. This is about PR people. We should have some PR people.
PR people,
like hand out flyers, have a sign spinner.
Yeah. Somebody out signs, undisclosed secure location, this way, this way.
My original plan, the way that I envisioned the show going anyway, was that I would do this interview and ask him about his book and about his research and about everything that he did inside of it. And then towards the end, the latter 5% of the interview would be a couple UFO related questions. That's what I thought. But to my surprise, it seemed like he really did want to talk about UFOs. He alluded to it a little bit into the interview that we'd be talking about it later. So obviously you guys probably figured out he knew those questions were coming, or at least one or two of them. But then he kind of segued to it himself, which I was pleased with, but also a little bit surprised. And so I had transitioned the interview to deal with those questions kind of in the middle of it. However, to my further surprise, he gave me much more detail than I thought. Even though I had cleared asking him about UFOs, I had absolutely no idea what he was going to tell me. I thought he may dismiss the whole thing. I thought that that was a big possibility, and hey, that's okay, but I wanted to ask him nonetheless. I also thought maybe he'd give an interesting soundbite or two. Little did I know he'd go into this type of deep detail and this level of detail. So stay tuned for a quick blast. This is the UFO segment from my interview with former CIA Director James Woolsey. And let me just interject for a second. So all of those who are watching this and will comment on this video or on the podcast and say, well, that's exactly what you would expect from a former director of the CIA. What would your response be? Because I know those comments are coming.
We'll know more within a few weeks, perhaps, because there have been, over the years now, events of one kind or another, usually involving some kind of aircraft-like airframe, that has put a number of people into a situation where they'd say, like me, I never thought there was anything to all this. It always seemed pretty far out to me. Don't know what the reality is, but, and then fill in the but.
First thing first, he's admitting basically that he was a skeptic. Here he is, director of the CIA, and he was a skeptic about it. But you'll see that throughout this interview, he uses very carefully placed words on how much he wants to talk about. And he's not pushed, which is a good thing. Greenwald doesn't push anybody. He lets them talk at the comfort level that they feel is appropriate. And so what Ambassador is referring to is the last few years with the release of the Pentagon videos, that there is some sort of airframe aircraft that is unidentifiable. Pay attention to what he says, because he's very careful into what he places.
Just a little historical perspective here. The first director of the CIA in 1947 was a Navy admiral named Roscoe Hillenkotter. He didn't last very long, but many years later he would become a board member of NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, which gave that group gravitas and a lot more credibility. And he was instrumental because during the 1950s, the CIA denied having any interest in UFOs. And Admiral Hillenkotter was able to get his hands on some documents that said, in fact, they were interested in UFOs from day one.
There was one case in which a friend of mine was able to have his aircraft stop at 40,000 feet or so and not continue operating as a normal aircraft. What was going on? I don't know. Does anybody know? We'll have to look into it. There have just been enough things like that have occurred that I think there will be a lot of examination of what's going on over the course of the several months, or maybe years, but maybe months to go.
And obviously you're talking about the secrecy around unidentified aerial phenomena and UFOs.
Wow.
All right, now let's think about that for a moment. Aircraft at 40,000 feet, presumably a jet aircraft, which is going several hundred miles an hour. He said stopped. Now, was it a fast stop? I'm thinking no, because there would be. You had to have been gradually slung, then brought to a stop, which is amazing
even if it wasn't a jet, let's say that his friend is a private pilot, flies around all the time in a single Cessna doing, 175 or something like that an hour. Just to have his airplane stop functioning as an airplane and stay still in the air is rather interesting. Now, could there be some atmospheric physics, wind is just pushing enough or pressure is just enough if it's a small enough craft that it just seems that way? But at 40,000 feet, I don't think too many single or small
the
airplanes
higher
are
you
going
go,
there.
the thinner the air gets.
Yeah.
So there's so much for
I don't think
air
that would work.
resistance.
So much for that. Some sort of funneling vortex, maybe like what happens in the Bermuda Triangle.
Actually, it reminds me of a mediocre 1970s made-for-TV movie called Terror, 37,000 feet. And basically, the jetliner gets stopped at that altitude, and it was basically a rip-off of The Exorcist, which had just been released, and it turned out to be some sort of satanic. I think William Shatner played a priest in it, and he got sucked out. That is.
It reminds me of the movie, I think it was called Millennium, or Millennial.
Yeah.
Millennium.
Yeah.
Millennium, where the jetliner is supposed to crash, but what happens is it freezes is a passenger carrier. It freezes in travel, and it's actually a UFO that is taking everybody off and then replacing them with carcasses, for lack of a word, sort of like genetic made-up carcasses, and then lets the plane crash, but rescues all the people. But it's interesting. It's an ambassador, CIA director, saying, I had a friend that told me about an incident that he had. Notice there's no application to actually a UFO itself involved in this, but it's still just a mysterious act that we don't know, and maybe this person, a lot of people, they have missing time, whenever they talk about sightings, when they do see something, for all we know, something could have been above this aircraft that stopped it, and the pilot doesn't even know he was missing for a while. Who knows? But his experience would be, I'm telling my friend, something is going on out there that's odd, because my airplane, it sounds like an X-Files thing. I wonder if the CIA has like some X-Files guys and gals out there.
Were you using an analogy, or were you being serious that you had a friend that had an aircraft at 40,000 feet that mysteriously stopped?
I said it was. I have a friend who had been in an aircraft. 40,000 is not crazy. I mean, that's just all your pilots looking at this know that's not a wild and crazy idea. But I've talked to someone whom I respect, who says that there was some event in which an aircraft was paused, and basically that's all I know about that.
Wow. I mean, you're kind of blowing my mind there. I really didn't expect that type of a story, and I appreciate you sharing that.
He said his friend had been in an aircraft. That the friend may not be the only one in this aircraft from the sound of it. He didn't say he was piloting the aircraft. He was been in an aircraft. And he said it's somebody he respects.
Let me, if you don't mind, if I can stick with that topic, since we shifted a little bit from the JFK assassination, but talking about secrets and the CIA and so on. John Brennan, another former director of the CIA, had come out. And in fact, just to make sure that I have his quote right, and I wanted your reaction and maybe your overall thoughts on it, John Brennan had did a interview with George Mason University, and he was talking about UFOs and UAPs, and he was referencing some of the videos that have come out. I'm not sure if you're aware of those or watched them or anything, but called them quite eyebrow-raising. And then he started talking about life in the universe. I think it's a bit presumptuous and arrogant for us to believe that there's no other form of life anywhere in the entire universe. Which was pretty interesting to hear a former director of the CIA talk about. John Ratcliffe, former DNI, he was interviewed with Fox News. He was talking about vehicles traveling that would exceed the sonic barrier without, the sound barrier, without a sonic boom. That interview got a lot of attention too. So can I add your name to the list of those that are speaking out about this? What are your overall thoughts about whatever that phenomena is, and what are we dealing with?
The only list I'm comfortable going on is one that would say these people have reported very curious behavior by aircraft. And it may be something real that is an extraordinary change for some unheralded reason, or it may be a complex set of different views of what's going on in the world of cyber and so forth. So I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as skeptical as I was a few years ago, to put it mildly. Something is going on that's surprising to a series of intelligent aircraft experienced pilots. And we'll just have to
See what it is.
see what it is.
Do you feel it's us? I mean, do you, in the sense that America is potentially testing something, and let's say the Navy doesn't know that the Air Force is testing technology, do you think it's Russia doing what they do best and trying to, taunt us and in various ways? Do you have a theory in that regard? Because you had mentioned you're not as skeptical as you were a couple years ago. What did you mean by that?
Just that I have been not in the presence of, but I've been in conversations with several individuals who have been close to an aircraft performing in an extraordinary fashion, that performs in a fashion that has not yet come to be something that people are comfortable with or expecting to see.
I think there's something else that we've watched this obviously beforehand, that just kind of popped out to us there. He's expanding it beyond just what he discussed with the 40,000 feet, somebody on a plane. Now he's talking about he's been around other people that have been around other unidentifiable aircraft. And I just want to point out again, in case you didn't hear me saying it, when you do a lot of interviews and interrogations and stuff, you look for micro movements and things like that when somebody's talking and speaking with you. And when the questions were asked, do you think it's the Russians? You could see him, his head just shakes no. Do you think it's us? His head is shaking no. And remember, this is a man that was at, unless there is a Majestic 12, which we don't really bite on, but, at the top of the intelligence community within the most powerful and advanced country out there, the United States, in case somebody's wondering what that would be. And he's saying no to the Russians, no to us, and something he said about the cyber, that was a little odd. I don't quite know what he means about that. I don't think he would be thinking that there's some development in the cyber world that this could be like an illusion, I guess, or something along that line.
My takeaway from that is that he was referring to cyber sabotage,
right,
which we have done against Iran. And as we tape this, Israel may have done that just a couple of days ago, again in Iran.
Yeah,
sabotaging one of their nuclear installations.
And I think along that line, I think what he might be talking about is, this is a huge presumption because we can't ask him some details about that. But in the case where there's radar contacts on our warships, let's say the Tic Tac involvement, there's a lot of people say, oh well, they were updating their radar at that time too, and they shut it down. So obviously they thought it was a problem with the radar, but that's just part of that entire scenario, because there was physical I would say, visual, physical contact with pilots of F-18 Hornets, and more than one pilot too. As you see in some interviews, they say, well, maybe Commander so-and-so was having some issues that day, or pre-believed that there was going to be UFOs, so he just saw UFOs. No, it was 4 people in 2 different planes, and one other pilot has kept her identity disguised, but has also backed up and said, oh, yeah, we were chasing those things, and they were out flying us hugely big time. So, or drones that are appearing over our warships off the coast of California now, that's going on as well. They call them drones, however, they don't behave like any military or civilian drones that we are aware of. Maybe he's talking about leaps and bounds in cyber and mechanical development, AI, where drones can interact and operate on their own, perhaps from a foreign country, maybe China, or there's some great James Bond villain out there, I always say, that they haven't uncovered yet, that has invented something. I
noticed also
seems not to think so.
Woolsey chooses his words carefully. He keeps referring to aircraft.
Yeah.
He doesn't say UFO. He doesn't say UAP.
Right. He's using airframe, aircraft, that sort of discussion right now.
That's about as far as I'd like to go.
Sure.
Which is openness to new things, willingness to examine them, hope that we can be friendly and able to deal with a wide range of behaviors in terms of dealing with our fellow human beings or with other creatures if they exist.
Wow.
You can drop the mic now and go home.
Drop the mic and go home.
You did it. You nailed it.
Yeah. That's what I would call a paradigm shift in the way that humanity would be thinking. I must admit, throughout my life, I've been like, oh, it'd be cool if they're aliens, as you know, I'm a very religious man, so to speak.
Yeah.
And, there's people that, of course, have wide variety of views as to what, the lights in the sky might be, or the actual sighting of vehicles might be. And, of course, there's fraud. There's tricksters out there. There's scientific developments out there.
Tricksters. I am shocked. Shocked, I say.
And there's all kinds of things going on. But again, like he says, in the last few years, there's been some extreme developments that
he actually
have put us off.
used the word creatures. I like
and
that.
used the word creatures. But interesting, he talked about, the wide variety of feelings that we have if we're able to maintain some sort of, let's say, calm, rational thinking, critical thinking, and analysis during maybe, for lack of a word, I hate using a revelation that is a paradigm shift in the way humanity has lived up to this time.
We should do a show. I hope we do.
We will do a show.
On UFOs/aliens and religion.
Oh, we are. We're going to go.
And get a couple locally here, some of our clergy on. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, we will eventually do a show like that. We're also going to do one on UFO cults too, as well. So, but
yeah, well, what's the old saying? What's the difference between a cult and religion? Say, give a cult enough time, you'll have a religion. I digress.
Digressing. So, one of the things in my mindset has been, to me it would seem not like a great big deal, and I always thought, oh, people will handle it just fine, until 2020 came around. Now, when 2020 came around, I thought, well, people are going to handle that just fine too. And you see the wide differences in feelings and emotions and outrage and compliance. I mean, all from both spectrums of humanity during this 2020 year, that you got to start thinking that, especially when you have, groups of people that go and break into, you know, the capital of the United States of America, and you're just and countries that say, well, we don't care if people die, you know, all kinds of different odd ways of thinking in a stressful global incident, that if there does in say 2021 or in our lifetime, the realization that there is creatures from another world, creatures from another dimension, a underwater society that has advanced technology, or whatever this could turn out to be, or
That was about every other episode of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. But
or some country that actually is under the North Antarctica. I don't know. Whatever it turns out to be, are we as a society going to be able? I question that now because of what has happened in 2020.
there was a piece I read in the New York Times this morning about the fundamentalist Christians refusing to get the COVID vaccine.
Uh-huh.
And Dr. Fauci said pretty much up to 90% of the country has to be get the vaccine before we can really just start to put this in the rearview mirror. Neil deGrasse Tyson said pretty much the same thing you did in an interview. We have this heroic image from movies of mankind uniting to face an alien threat, whether it was a 50s B movie or something like Independence Day. And he said, looking back at last year and just, between the global pandemic and the race riot and all these, I'm very disappointed in humankind right now. Is this how we're going to react when the alien mothership shows up?
Will humankind actually decide to, well, oh, never mind. Let's just go. Let's just go.
I think we ought to be open to new possibilities. Some new possibilities are frauds. I don't think this one is, but over history, there have been a lot of frauds, and we could have another one. I don't think so.
It's a fascinating topic. I want to veer transition back to your book, but if I can just ask you one last question, because this actually ties into a personal connection I have with you. I don't expect you to remember it, but about a decade ago, I was producing a television series for the History Channel, and your name, as I'm sure you recall this part, had turned up into kind of UFO legend. And I had talked to your office as a producer. We were looking to interview you then. And your office had informed us that the story we heard was not real. And so we didn't pursue it and respected that. But I know that my audience would want me to ask you this about a alleged briefing by a doctor who wrote about it in a book and said that he sat down with you and he was a briefer of UFOs. For you when you were the sitting director. So again, just for my audience who's not aware of the rebuttal, is there any truth to that story that you were briefed on UFOs when you were a sitting director?
I remember the doctor. I thought he was articulate and seemed to be bright. This was after I was in the CIA job, I believe. Not while.
Forgive me. I had kind of recalled it while you were director. I apologize.
But I think that something like that did occur because I remember the doctor writing about his meeting with me and sounding much more definitive than I remembered the discussion. And so I was not mad. I just said, well, he was pushing the envelope much more than I would like to see it pushed or believe it could be pushed. But I'd be willing to have the doctor show up these days and give you a call if you want it and see what people say.
All right. Well, we know which doctor he's talking about. A man that we're going to probably involve in our UFO cult series. I think it's going to end up having to be maybe a couple of episodes for us to break that one up into, because we won't even say the doctor's name yet either. We're going to save that for our show. I don't know why they hesitate to actually name him there. Maybe they're afraid, the guy's made some
Well,
money
I
off
think
of UFOs.
Woolsey made a good point when he said the doctor was pushing the envelope
Yes.
further than he wanted to go. I would say these days he's gone off the rails.
He is totally off the rails. I thought, and I would have to go back and research again too. When Greenwald said, that he thought that Woolsey was in office, but then corrected himself, said, "Oh yeah, that was when you were not in office anymore." For some reason, I thought that doctor did say that he was in office. But
I'm glad you mentioned that, because
Yeah.
I remember thinking I watched his first documentary and I could swear he said that he was briefing
yeah, briefing
Woolsey.
Woolsey.
while Woolsey was CIA
Right.
director.
Now, that may have come across, though, later on there was a certain gathering in Washington, D.C. with ufologists and that doctor and others. And then they had a board of people that were in the government or former government. And so maybe it was during that the time period when they thought at that time they were going to disclose everything that was out there. And of course, that never happened either. So it might have been, I think, I would have to go back again and watch and see if Woolsey, if that doctor said that Woolsey was in it. But that word debriefing him or briefing him was, it was definitely an envelope that was pushed. When you hear the doctor talk about it, you make it sound like, okay, we have an appointment for you to come in and tell us exactly what's going on, and we're going to help you and understand where you're at and where we're at in this situation, and we're going to get it handled. That's kind of the impression you get when the doctor retells it. And obviously the ambassador is like, no, that's not what happened. It might have been like, hey, how you doing, sir? Yeah, fine. Hey, let me tell you about something. Yeah. Oh, okay. I got to run and get in the car now.
Yeah, I have to go spy on Putin.
Yeah. We got bigger issues than lights dancing in the sky.
Now, that was the main section on UFOs. I say main because out of respect for his time, and he's been very busy, and orchestrating and setting up this interview was hard to find a time that matched up for us. And I wanted to give him the respect that he deserved for spending time with me. And he was doing public relations for his book. Being the author of a couple myself, I understand how hard it is to put that together, and I wanted to showcase the work that he did. Not everybody's going to believe in his theory about the JFK assassination, but I wanted to highlight what he did. So I felt I was on borrowed time already with the UFO topic, so I attempted to transition back to the secrecy surrounding JFK. And I crafted my question as such, but I think that just with Zoom and, we were 3/4 of the way through the interview, I don't think he caught that I was trying to transition back to JFK. So rather, he crafted his answer to if I was still talking about UFOs and UAPs. Now, in the full interview, I clarified and did go back to the JFK assassination, had him answer and address that specifically. But here's his answer when it comes to the secrecy surrounding UFOs and how he put it. I appreciate all of the information on that. Let me transition back to what we were talking about, the secrecy around the assassination and your book, Operation Dragon. Recommend everybody to go buy it. I've got links to it in the show notes. If you're listening to the audio version, it's www.theblackvault.com/show notes. I'll link you right over to the ambassador's book. You can purchase that. I highly recommend you do so because you go into a lot of detail. You publish even letters from Oswald and kind of decode a lot of stuff in a very cool color insert in the middle of the book. So I highly recommend everybody to get that. Going back to the secrecy, though, in your opinion, and again, more of the topics in your book, do you believe that there will be a time where either the CIA or the U.S. government as a whole will just say, okay, look, here it is. Here is everything we have on the assassination, truly 100%. You guys figure it out. Do you think that we are getting to that point?
I'm not sure yet, but if we get close to it, we ought to get up to it with a sense of both friendliness and skepticism. And we shouldn't neglect either one. We should not get into a mode in which we say only idiots could come up with a crazy damned idea like this. But we also shouldn't get into the mode of saying, hey, this is cool. It's really exciting. Yeah, let's go. No, I mean, no on both of those counts. Let's let the scientists and engineers examine, assess, play it straight, and see if there's anything out there that we all would want to know about.
That's where it ends. Greenwald is being very truthful about, I mean, he seriously redirected that, specifically saying back to your book, JFK Assassination, and yet I'm sorry, I call him Dr. Woolsey, Ambassador Woolsey felt like he was still answering the future of identifying some of these UFO, UAPs, whatever you want to call them.
And now the men in black are going to come and take Woolsey away, and we'll never see him again.
No, he's going to mysteriously die of a heart attack at 83 or 85, 89 years old, whatever he is, right? Mysteriously. Yeah, that's another skepticism that we have. I like his concept. Basically, remain calm, be analytical about everything, think critically, examine it scientifically, and come to the conclusions during that process. You know, kind of like 2020 was supposed to be.
And remember, 90% of what you see about UFOs on the internet is crap.
Yes, but this one wasn't crap. And that's why we filtered out all the stuff and brought you only the good, solid, hard truth. That there still is no answer, complete answer. So it'll be interesting. Let's let the
I'm amazed that decades later they're still writing books about John Kennedy's assassination.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic there.
Yep.
They're still coming out with books about that and theories on that too as well still. But anyway, let's stick with UFOs here. That would pretty much sum it up. I think that would be the end of our little discussion about this and our reactions to the video. It's a very interesting conversation with the ambassador, and I think it's something that people ought to take a look at. And hopefully you lasted through our entire version of looking at it. So remember, folks, stop looking down at your phones and start looking up to the skies. You want to try that again?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, you were way behind on that one. Got anything else you want to say before I go?
No.
Goodbye, kids.